mine came up to me and says, "Hey, you know, I went to get your album in Thousand Oaks. It's all sold out in Thousand Oaks. Well, I've been living on your Thousand Oaks area, and I never saw my albums in Thousand Oaks, and this must be the first one ever hit Thousand Oaks." So we really haven't experienced too much of that kind of stuff, at least not yet, because most people don't know who I am in the rural areas. All of a sudden they hear me, they hear my single. You know, it's hard for them to realize it was 5 albums before, and there were a lot of people that were into that before. But it was such a cultish, you know, not cultish, but actually a cult type group that it was really limited, you know.
It started in Montreal in the 60s for Gino Vannelli, and now he's a hit in Thousand Oaks, and thousands of other communities too. You see, it's been building slowly but surely ever since the start.
We've been kind of on the edge, you know, for so many years of like not quite sure if this next album is going to hit the masses or not, you know. With Pauper Paradise and Just Gemini and so on and so forth, you know, going down the line. Now that this album is seemingly doing it, you know, and the single is, of course, you know, leading the way. I don't know what quite to make of it. It's like, maybe it's a lie, you know, maybe it's not really true. It's still healthy, because it's kind of nice to know that you can, you know, touch a certain audience that you've never touched before, and I think without turning yourself into, you know, a hooker.
This is Ed Shane with Gino Vannelli, Brother to Brother, a special program on Gino's new album and on Gino's special relationship with his own brothers. Joe, the keyboard man on the albums and on the live tours, and Ross, a songwriter in his own right. It's ironic that Brother to Brother is Gino Vannelli's biggest LP ever, because there was almost no such album.
The album was called Appaloosa, and that we're building up the message of the Appaloosa was to be almost the Messiah or the savior of souls. So we built the whole album concept around that, and he had, you know, come up with this painter who painted a picture of this kind of half angel, half man, half Appaloosa with wings, with surrogates, you know, beside him, with guardians beside him, and he, as the album opened up, you know, there was this whole herd that he was leading away from the world into some promised land, and it seemed, you know, like a pretty nice idea. And so basically that was the kind of feeling, this elusive feeling that I had inside me when I wrote the song, Appaloosa, running wild at the dead of the night, you know, you're a symbol of love and life.
That could have been the title song to the Brother to Brother album.
The only thing is that when we finally got all the album art and everything, as artwork, it didn't make it. So right away you're dealing with something that, you know, is not right. Then on top of that, it didn't seem like the album was an Appaloosa album. It turned out to be more of Brother to Brother, more of a human relationship type album with songs like Wheels of Life and People I Belong To and Feel Like Flying, and I Just Want to Stop, you know, like more like Me and You type songs, you know. Appaloosa seemed like the only cut that was really talking about like this whole, you know, fantasy type feeling of wanting to escape the world and going to a promised land, to feel better about oneself. And so I figured to myself, you know, I don't know if I want that anymore. After we spent quite a few bucks, you know, on the guy, and then to top it off, the album had to make release in a week from that day. So there was just no time. So there was this picture hanging around that a very good, I'm going to mention his name is Mark Hanauer. He works for A&M Records. And in my opinion, he's really got the potential of being, you know, a great photographer. He's an excellent photographer now, you know. And I worked really well with him. I feel I was totally comfortable with him. And we went to the beach one day in Malibu, and he happened to get a picture of me sitting on a couple old tires with my pants rolled up, just getting out of the water. There was this kid, you know, sitting right beside me. I thought to myself, well, this picture is really, I think, a pretty exciting picture, though very subtle. And I think a lot could be read into this picture. And I just felt like Brother to Brother was one of the more important cuts of the album. And I just figured like an album called Brother to Brother with this picture would really pretty much put a clear picture in people's minds of what the album would be like and what I am like as a person.
It's misinterpreted. Some people see Brother to Brother and they think it has to do with Gino's brothers, Joey and Ross. But no.
It's a pretty universal topic. It's not that much of a new message, but I think it's It's an important one. It basically, the lyrics are basically stating that we have to do our best to accord ourselves with one another and to live our lives in peace. The song is a very much R&B oriented song. The melody is a very R&B oriented melody, and it's got a lot of rock feeling to it, especially in the middle part, and in the openings. It's quite jazzy. And I had many types of lyrics for that. I had 3 or 4 sets of lyrics. And one was talking about my brother relationship. I had one called Lover to Lover instead of Brother to Brother. Another one was called something to Mother or Mother to something, because of my political and legal problems I was having a year or 2 ago, and it was a very spiteful song. And it wasn't 60s at all, it was very now. And I just thought that all of a sudden, as the melody started growing with me, I started changing the melody. And it started to become clear to me that it was a brother-to-brother song. It was a basic 60s message, where, peace and goodwill, to all men, and let's live our lives in peace. And it seems that that's the way the song came about. It seems like that was the appropriate message and the appropriate sounding lyric for the song. I know that I'm gonna.
The lyrics Gino finally decided on are sure the right ones. It shows that things can change, especially when there's somebody like Gino Vannelli who wants them right.
Friday night that we think we got a track, and we're pretty excited. And I go home, and I wake up Saturday morning, and I said, oh my God, the 9-minute track that everybody thinks we have over the weekend, they're all happy about it, and I know that it's not right. I know that I'm gonna go in Monday, and I'm not gonna like it. And we went, sure enough, we went on that Monday, and we played it, and everybody was saying, it's a good track. And I'm saying to myself, actually I'm saying to Joe, man, once we get strings, and once we get things on top of that, and I put my vocal, I'm telling you, we're running into problems. Mm. And we decided, that was the last track we cut, I think. And when we changed it, we just changed it, the drummer went just a straight 4 in some in the verses, and just overall more solid and exciting. Joe was playing, and everybody, more of a rock feel to it, R&B rock feel to it. And boy, when we got that track, boy, we were excited, because we really knew that was a good track. Mm.
Changes in musical arrangements and in rehearsal arrangements. And a knock on the door from the neighbors. That's next on Brother to Brother.
Sometimes when you go to a rehearsal hall, it almost becomes I don't know. It's too much of a show. You got to really let your pants down. When you practice for an album. And so we had our best time anyways doing this album. It wasn't.
The rehearsals for the Brother to Brother album were at Joe Vannelli's house in Agoura, west of Los Angeles.
Joe fixed up his garage, put some insulation and all that, and about 3-4 weeks of rehearsal, and it was great because I just was a walk away. I live on the same street as Joe, and Joe was in the rehearsal hall, was right in his own house. And it was 5-6 hours a day. We worked pretty efficiently, and I think we got more work done because it was less traveling, and it was more. Joe had his tape recorders here. We were running some mics, to his living room, seeing how it sounded on tape, and all. A couple of neighbors were a little, disturbed.
Yeah, the baby next door cried a little bit, but like that when the president of the record company showed up a couple of weeks later in his Rolls Royce, everybody kind of kept it down afterwards. I figured maybe we had to be important or something,
The neighbors are probably even more impressed now when they hear I Just Want to Stop on the radio. I Just Want to Stop was written by Ross Vannelli.
Practically every song you hear today has the same message in it, talking about a female that you feel for. Just once in a while everybody gets that emotion, so you write that kind of lyric, and that's basically what all it was,
What Ross is really trying to say is there is a person behind the lyric to I Just Want to Stop.
The only thing I can say about her is that she just gave me the emotion that I cared for her, and wanted to tell her in so many words that I cared for her, and wanted to think about her, and wanted to tell her that I was thinking about her, and that's all it really was, I mean, I really can't get into it much more than that, straight ahead.
Without a lawsuit. The lady who inspired Ross's song is a good way to get into the subject of songwriting generally, and to Gino's songwriting specifically. It goes from R&B funk to jazz to classical orientations. Gino also writes with one person or one subject in mind.
You know, in ballet, there's something called spotting, you know, and if you're going to make your turns without getting dizzy, you have to look straight ahead to save some dizziness, or to, you know, exclude dizziness as much as you can. And so with recording, it does help thinking of a particular person or spotting, knowing exactly what you're doing, you know, why you're doing it, and aiming towards something. It usually ends up being a better product. Usually ends up being a better song if you have a particular reason for writing, whether it be just a message, a motivation, or a person. So yes, I do. I think thinking about something is a definite aid in writing. For instance, an album like Storm at Sunup had a veneer of being a sexual album, or a lot of people thought the album cover was like, you know, foxy or just plain whatever they thought it was. Whereas that album was very serious and very introspective, maybe a little self-indulgent, but it had some of my better music, you know, on it, and it was very much how I felt at that time. Some of the greatest classical composers were not the greatest melodists in the world, but they had incredible ideas for color and for arrangement, and their talent, you know, really excelled that way. Whereas some artists, like a Gershwin or something like that, you know, what he lacked in arranging capabilities and things like that, he made up for it threefold with his melody writing and his whole basic feel.
I wanted to know if Gino put himself into one or the other of those categories he described.
I think I'm a pretty strong melodist, you know, because I've always leaned towards melody, and I like good melody. I think I construct my melodies I try, at least in a very, you know, professional way. I try to think about them as a beginning, as a middle, as an end. Think about them as just a plain art. I think a lot about its background, you know, chord changes and all things like that. And I think I'm very influenced by symphonic writers in the way that even with our rock type productions, we think a lot of counterpoint and counterlines and things to embellish, you know, the whole sound of what we're doing.
Gino has taken his classical and melodic inspiration into the studio several times. In 1977, the result was Pauper in Paradise, a symphonic work in 4 movements, recorded in London with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. Now, Gino and I were talking in the kitchen at Joey and Diane Vannelli's house, and Gino started wondering what it would be like if it were not me he was talking to, but Gershwin himself.
This is a silly question, but I want to know what his basic frustration in life is. Because I don't know how good he is. I just want to know what he thinks about his weak points. I want to know how he overcomes them, how he gets through every day. I want to know a lot about what he thought about his own music, and what he thought about other musics, and how good he thought he was compared to other people, and how limited or whatever, you know. I know that he idolized a lot of the French composers like Ravel, and it was an old story that I think he went to see Ravel for lessons. And Ravel asked him how much he made a year. It was 1921, 22, 24. And he said, I make $150,000 a year. And Ravel says, I'll take lessons from you.
We'll have to deal with the spirit world to get those answers from Mr. Gershwin. Next, we go from one spiritual world to another. This is Gino Vannelli, Brother to Brother.